affected by this, please do stay tuned.
Looking forward to that. Today we also have your health questions and queries answered by Dr. Yasser Madani with information on emphysema and chronic obstructive pulmonary disease.
We also have your fiqh questions and queries answered by our very own Sayyid Ali Nawab on the subject of qada, fasting and prayers.
For competition details, please stay tuned with Brother Mustafa Khatib.
The holy city of Karbala is home to tragedies, heartbreak, as well as treasures and wonders. Millions from around the world come to this sacred city with their prayers and tears. As well as being home to Imam Hussein Media Group, it's the home and resting place of Abu Abdullah al-Hussein and his brother, Abu Fadhil Abbas alayhum as-salam. Imam Hussein sacrificed his life for the sake of truth and preservation of the religion and teachings of his grandfather, Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him. Imam Baraka says, order our Shia to visit the shrine of Imam Hussein alayhi salam, since doing so increases sustenance, extends life, removes evil, and that visiting the grave of Imam Hussein alayhi salam is a duty upon every believer who believes in Imamate from Allah Almighty. So we invite you to come to Karbala and come to visit your Imam and perform ziyarah. Unfortunately, not everyone can come visit Imam Hussein. Not everyone has the ability or opportunity to visit regularly, and that's why Morning Baraka is giving you the opportunity to perform ziyarah from your very homes. We want you to send in your du'as and names of your loved ones so we can recite the ziyarah of Imam Hussein alayhi salam on their behalf. Maybe you have a loved one whose name you want to put forward, a marhum who would benefit, or maybe you miss Karbala and yearn to see Imam Hussein, peace and blessings be upon him. Why not send a small message or a dua for us to read here in the holy city of Karbala? Whoever's name you put, whatever dua or small message you have, the Morning Baraka team will pass it on to our team here in Karbala, and we will recite the ziyarah, read the message, and broadcast it on Imam Hussein TV3. Send in your names, du'as, and small messages to Morning Baraka at @ImamHussein.tv, or messages, or leave a comment on any of our social media platforms. We look forward to hearing from you, and may Allah and the Ahlul Bayt accept all of our a'mal and our ziyarah, inshallah.
Yes, welcome back. And to start today's show, today's blessed show where we are commemorating the martyrdom of Imam al-Kadhim, we're going to be hearing from the holy words of the Quran, from the voice of Sayyid Jalal Masumi. Sayyid, assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Sayyid, inshallah we'll be hearing from your voice in terms of the chapter of Fajr, so Surah Al-Fajr, verses 15 to 30. Please, Bismillah.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. فأما الإنسان إذا ما ابتلاه ربه فأكرمه ونعمه يقول ربي أكرمن. وأما إذا ما ابتلاه فقدر عليه رزقه رزقه فيقول ربي أهانن كلا بل لا تكرمون اليتيم ولا تحاضون على طعام المسكين وتأكلون التراث أكلا لما وتحبون المال حبا جما كلا إذا دكت الأرض دكا دكا وجاء ربك والملك صفا صفا وجيء يومئذ بجهنم يومئذ يتذكر الإنسان يومئذ يتذكر الإنسان وأنى له الذكرى يقول يا ليتني قدمت لحياتي يقول يا ليتني قدمت لحياتي فيومئذ لا يعذب عذابه أحد فيومئذ لا يعذب عذابه أحد ولا يوثق وثاقه أحد يا أيتها النفس المطمئنة ارجعي إلى ربك راضية مرضية فادخلي في عبادي فادخلي في عبادي وادخلي جنتي يا أيتها النفس المطمئنة ارجعي إلى ربك راضية مرضية فادخلي في عبادي وادخلي جنتي صدق الله العلي العظيم. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرج محمد وآل محمد. Thank you very much.
Yes, many thanks, Sayyid Jalal, for that beautiful rendition of Surah Al-Fajr, verses 15 to 30 in the Holy Quran. Many thanks for your time. Which brings us nicely onto this segment of the show, where we are really taking a deep dive into the supplications, the du'as, the ziyaras associated with the Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam, and trying to shed light on some of the key benefits of these ziyaras and supplications and du'as, as well as maybe some facts that you didn't know about that could be a benefit to you. Myself and Zahra welcome, as always, Ibrahim Al-Ansari to the show. Ibrahim, assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah.
It's always a pleasure to have you.
It's my pleasure to be here.
A lot of interesting conversations, and today, inshallah, we'll have another interesting conversation. But before we do start, and I'm sure that we all know, it is the martyrdom of Imam Al-Kadhim alayhi salam. So we send our condolences to the Muslim world on this tragic event. We will delve into a lot more about this event and this tragedy during the show. So, Zahra, Ibrahim, sorry.
To be honest, can I ask a question?
Yes.
I think when we talked about the martyrdom of Imam Al-Kadhim, and we said that we're going to be speaking about Imam Al-Kadhim today, Zahra's facial expressions changed. It seemed as if she had a direct connection with the Imam. She remembered the Imam, and I feel as if her eyes got a bit teary. So my question to you is, what happened there?
I think his story is painstaking and painful. It's just, when you recall how he was, although it's beautiful in some ways, when he said, it talks about his time in the prison, that I got this opportunity to pray to you and serve you in what most of us would feel, it's hell being in a prison. But then his end, where he says to his followers, tell my Shia that they will see me on Wednesday. And I think he obviously didn't explain how they would see him, but to imagine that he's on the bridge where they couldn't even tell there was a body, and you think, what did he go through? But an embodiment of patience. And again, Ahlul Bayt have so many lessons to teach us, and really in this short life, it doesn't matter how many times we go over and over, because we are still growing to reach that level of any perfection, a minute percentage of it, but they were perfect, and what beautiful examples God has given us. So it was just that thought that,
There's a lot of stories that we hear about Imam Al-Kadhim as well throughout, during his time, when he was taken from prison to prison, and each prison got, worse and worse, the situation was worse and worse. It's definitely, and I was just, as you were talking, I was just thinking, these Imams, on a general sense, although we haven't met them, but we just want so much care, and we just want them to be safe, and we just want them to be, we want to look after them. We want to make sure that they're safe and they're peaceful. But the stories that we hear, for example, Imam Hussein and the rest of the Imams, and especially when it comes to Imam Al-Kadhim, the thought of him going through pain. It's, for example, if with your father or mother or even grandfather, or even to a certain extent some of the Maraja, some of the scholars, we have so much love and devotion towards them. The thought of them going through a painful experience pains us. So imagine what it's like for an Imam who we take quite dearly.
Imam Al-Kadhim, a lot of people focus on the end of his life. And a lot of people focus on him from after he goes into prisons. But he has such a great status, and even by the death of his father, he actually went through some kind of oppression. The oppression he went through was that his elder brother tried to take imamah. And the Khalifa of the time, may Allah withdraw His mercy from him, he said, he tried to bring in the Ismaili sect, who's also his brother. Although Ismail had died about 20 years before that, maybe a bit less, and they tried to renew it, to make sure that he doesn't get the imamah. Whereas Imam al-Sadiq, he was very smart in how he approached the situation during his lifetime. Where when the Imam was 5 years of age,
Which Imam?
Imam al-Kadhim, when he was 5 years of age, his father Imam al-Sadiq, some of the questions he was asked, he would refer them back to Imam al-Kadhim at 5 years of age. For example, the biggest question, or one of the biggest questions he was asked at the age of 5 was by Abu Hanifa, Abu Hanifa al-Nu'man. He comes to him and he says, what do you say, does a man have free will or not?
Yeah.
At the age of 5. He replies by saying this splits into 3 categories. Either God is making man do it. 2, both God and man are doing it together. Or 3, no, man has free will and God has no hand in it. He says, if we take the first, then God cannot punish his servant for something he forced him to do. If we take the second, then God cannot punish his servant for something he was a partner in. So therefore it leaves us with the third, which means that man has to have free will. And another state where you realize the taqwa of Imam al-Kadhim is when he stands praying in front of an open door. Again, Abu Hanifa comes. Abu Hanifa goes to Imam al-Sadiq and he says to him, do you not tell us to not pray in front of open doors? Why is your son doing it? Imam al-Sadiq looked at him, he said, am I praying in front of the open door or is my son praying in front of the open door? He said, no, your son, but you told us not to do it. Why don't you tell your son? He said to him, if it is my son doing it, then go to my son and ask him why.
Yeah.
He went to Imam al-Kadhim and he said, because God is closer to me than that door. This is the taqwa of Imam al-Kadhim. This is Imam al-Kadhim from a young age. Imam al-Sadiq showed that he was ready for such a status of imamah. Of course, the caliphs didn't like it. They didn't like it at all. And they for example, after the istishhad of Imam al-Sadiq by the hand of the caliph of the time, he sends a letter to Wali al-Medina and he says to him, kill all of those who Sadiq has put in his wasiyyah to be after him. Imam al-Sadiq had written that the first is the Khalifa, the second is Wali al-Medina, the third is Abdullah, the fourth is a lady, I forgot her name, and the fifth is Imam al-Kadhim. Now he can't leave the first 4 and go to Imam al-Kadhim straight away, so he said, no, then leave it.
That's interesting.
They tried it from as soon as Imam al-Sadiq passed away, they tried to kill the Imam. They weren't able to. Then that is when after time they took him, when Harun al-Rashid came, may Allah withdraw His mercy from him. The reason he took him was this. When he heard of the great status of Imam al-Kadhim, he goes to the grave of Rasulullah. And he goes to the grave and he says to him, Assalamu alayka ya am. Peace be upon you, O uncle. To show that he has direct relation to Rasulullah. Why? To try to minimize the status of Imam al-Kadhim. When he did that, Imam al-Kadhim was at the grave of Rasulullah. He said, Assalamu alayka ya jad. Peace be upon you, O grandfather. Then Imam al-Kadhim turns around to Harun al-Rashid and he says to him, if Rasulullah was to come right now and ask for your daughter's hand in marriage, would you give her to Rasulullah? He said, yes. He said, you see, that's the difference. Because for me, I cannot give her as its mahram.
SubhanAllah.
He was taken to prison.
Wisdom.
Just
lot of
that,
wisdom.
you look at their ages, and when you talk about, the 5-year-olds, you think, subhanAllah, even the children in Karbala, they weren't, like the children that we have today, 5 years old. It was such, pearls of wisdom. It's amazing. But I'm just conscious that the ziyarah you need to recite. So would you like to?
So the ziyarah of Imam al-Kadhim alayhi salam. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد السلام عليك يا ابن رسول الله وابن وصيه السلام عليك يا مولاي يا موسى بن جعفر ورحمة الله وبركاته. أشهد أنك قد بلغت عن الله ما حملك وحفظت ما استودعك وحللت حلال الله وحرمت حرام الله وأقمت أحكام الله وتلوت كتاب الله وصبرت على الأذى في جنب الله وجاهدت في الله حق جهاده حتى أتاك اليقين. وأشهد أنك مضيت على ما مضى عليه آباؤك الطاهرون وأجدادك الطيبون الأوصياء الهادون الأئمة المهديون، لم تؤثر عمن على هدى ولم تمل من حق إلى باطل. وأشهد أنك نصحت لله ولرسوله ولأمير المؤمنين وأنك أديت الأمانة واجتنبت الخيانة وأقمت الصلاة وآتيت الزكاة وأمرت بالمعروف ونهيت عن المنكر وعبدت الله مخلصا مجتهدا محتسبا حتى أتاك اليقين. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
It's very interesting because when you visit the shrines of Imam al-Kadhim and Imam al-Jawad, who are buried right next to each other, sometimes you find in one corner there could be a joint ziyarah, so it's speaking to both Imams at the same time. And I think sometimes you find another door which is a ziyarah specifically for Imam al-Kadhim, another door specifically for Imam. So this one is speaking specifically about?
This is specifically to Imam al-Kadhim alayhi afdal wasalam. So they both have specific ziyarahs, and they have a joint ziyarah as well. So this one is directly to Imam al-Kadhim alayhi afdal wasalam.
And in terms of the language as well, we talk a lot during these segments about the language that's used in the previous couple of sessions for the martyrdom of Sayyidah Zainab alayhi salam. The words and the language used was very descriptive, very out of the norm when it comes to usual ziyaras. Obviously because it reflects her story, her tragedy. When it comes to this specific ziyarah, it's a bit more
generic, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a bit more generic, a bit more of a normal, as we could say, ziyarah, right?
Yeah, this is more of the, let's call it the traditional way of ziyarah. So when you do ziyarah of Abu Abdullah al-Hussein, it's very similar. The ziyarah of Abu Fadhil al-Abbas, very similar. It follows that sort of way. However, we must not undermine this way, because first of all, you are sending your salams to people who are definitely ahya. عند ربهم يرزقون, just like the Quran said, that do not count those who have died in the way of Allah to be dead. Instead, they are alive by their Lord, receiving great bounties. And also, because these ziyarahs, they show the statuses of the Imams. So for example, in one part, he says, نَصَحْتَ لِلَّهِ وَلِرَسُولِهِ وَلِأَمِيرِ الْمُؤْمِنِينَ. It means that throughout his life, the only way he was going in, the only way he was advising in, was advising towards the message of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which he sent through Rasulullah Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Of course, it also gives mention to Amir al-Mu'mineen, Ali ibn Abi Talib, because he is the one who allowed this message to carry on as well. So that is very important to understand how he lived his life. That even in prison, because we know, for example, in Basra, the person who was in charge of the prison, he said, I cannot keep him anymore because I can see nothing but piety from him. Then they moved him to another prison in Baghdad, and that prison in Baghdad, the person who was in charge of it, he actually became a Shia of Imam al-Kadhim. And in the worst prison that he was sent, which was guarded by a Sindhi, even then, one of the guards was actually a Shia of Imam. And to prove it, the guard actually comes. Imam al-Kadhim, by the way, played a great role in teaching us taqiyya. He played one of the biggest roles of the Imams of teaching us how to perform taqiyya. One of the guards comes to the Imam and he says to him, "O Imam, sorry, the Imam comes to him. He says to him, come. He says, I think Harun al-Rashid is looking to behead you and is looking for an excuse. If you are Shia, you're going to be beheaded. Therefore, when you go, do your wudu. When you go do your wudu. By the way, this explanation at the start is from me. He says to the God, he says, when you do your wudu, wash your feet and do not wipe them. The way that they do.
Okay.
Wash your feet and do not wipe them. So that day, Harun al-Rashid has had guards to overlook this God for when he performs his wudu.
SubhanAllah.
He went and they saw that he washed his feet instead of wiping them. They said, no, he's from our people.
Yeah.
So they left him alone. Then he came back and he said, next time when you do your wudu, start wiping again.
SubhanAllah.
Such imams of mercy, really. I think we're towards the end of the time now.
Yeah.
Oops, sorry. Is there anything else you'd like to add before?
That's all.
Ali, you?
Just lastly,
Yeah.
from his name, Kadhim al-Ghayth, we must take that as a lesson. Just his name in itself is a lesson. Kadhim al-Ghayth is a person who keeps an anger from great tragedies that befall upon them. So if he was able to do so, we must take him. Inna lakum fi rasulillahi uswatun hasana. And likewise,
Massive life lessons and you know,
definitely
things to take forward. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
I
Jazakumullah
personally
khair.
learned so much. It's just so beautiful to have the conversations about Ahl Bayt, and I hope the viewers enjoy these discussions as much as I do, and I hope, you know, inshallah, Ali
Very
does
much
as
so.
well.
Yeah, very much so.
Have a blessed
I still
day.
have, by the way, like 3 or 4 more questions, but it's just the time that doesn't
bless.
permit us. But inshallah,
We'll
can
carry on
carry
after.
Inshallah.
Inshallah.
Inshallah, definitely.
So next up.
Yeah, on that note, we will be joined by Baraka Hussein as well as Zahra, who will be focusing on the specialist segment. So please join us after the break.
Welcome back, dear viewers. We just had Brother Ibrahim al-Ansari talking and reciting. There was the ziyarah of Imam al-Kadhim. I hope that you enjoyed that as much as I did. It's very refreshing. And something else now, the topic that we're going to go into in this segment is something that's more of a social aspect that can affect us in different ways at different stages in our life as well. The topic is addiction, and joining us this morning as ever is our wonderful sister Zahra Hussein, who's from Canada and is a psychotherapist, and you can find her on social media under the Muslim Counsellor. So join me in welcoming Sister Baraka Hussein. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam.
How are you this morning?
Alhamdulillah,
You look,
yourself.
mashallah, very refreshed and, you know, ready for this topic.
Inshallah,
enlightening
inshallah.
us. So usually we'd think about addictions, and I will speak as a person, as a lay person, that, you know, perhaps alcohol, drugs, cigarettes come to mind. And I don't know what the causes of these kind of addictions are, what prompts people to go down those routes. But perhaps you can give us a bit of background, what kind of cases you see, what addictions are sort of things that perhaps we don't always think about. I've given the top ones that I can think of off the top of my head. But what do you see in your sort of career and, you know, your professional life?
It's true, when people think about addictions, the idea of alcohol and drugs come to mind. There's also gambling and there's also pornography, so it doesn't necessarily mean just substance abuse. So the idea of an addiction is that you need a certain substance or you need a certain thing that will satisfy your need, okay, to fulfill it. And so when initially, how does an addiction occur? And I hear this from my clients, for example, when it comes to substance abuse, is they're at a party, they're at a get-together, and it could be both Muslim, non-Muslim, different background people, And it's a social situation where there's marijuana, and so they will smoke a joint, you know, just socially. And I heard one client say, I enjoyed it, so then I started doing it.
Right.
So then it became a routine and a habit, and I cannot sleep without doing it. I cannot relax without doing it. And so the idea here is that in his mind, if I do not take this substance, I will not relax, I will not sleep. And so
It's the dependency on that.
the dependency begins, because he said it became a habit, a routine.
Yeah.
So what happens here physiologically, excuse me, and at the chemical level here in the body, you get the chemicals in your body which give you that release. You like that feeling. So you want more of it. You take more, it doesn't give you the same feeling, the same amount. So you take more, right? That doesn't give you the satisfaction. More. So the hit gets higher and higher in order to reach that demand. And when it does, it's never enough. Hence it becomes an addiction.
Okay. And it becomes more regular?
Routine, regular habit. Like you said, it becomes a dependency. They rely on that for that satisfying feeling. But it's never enough. So this is where you get into overdose. This is where you get, when we talk about alcoholism, it can be destructive, especially from a health perspective, where you're destroying your liver with the alcohol, for example. So there's so many different levels to it, different types of drugs. That some would think that smoking a joint once a week is harmless, but in fact the THC levels of the chemicals that are into your body with that one joint is enough to trigger anxiety. One joint, anxiety. And so people take marijuana thinking that it's going to reduce their anxiety. If they take, this is one joint and it will trigger it. It'll stay in your body for a week.
Wow.
So one joint. Imagine people who take it daily and multiple times a day. What is it doing to you? In your mind, you think it's relaxing you. But in fact, these chemicals stay in your body over such a long period of time, and it becomes the triggering effect for anxiety, for example.
Oh, goodness. So it's almost like a double barrel.
Exactly.
The substance that you actually taking is fueling what you're already
so what you're taking then becomes the trigger. Because you need it to feel better, but it actually chemically is making you feel worse.
So you mentioned different types of addictions of substances. So alcohol, drugs, they're quite common ones.
This is what we understand.
We understand, and maybe perhaps naively we think it doesn't happen in our community. But we've had questions in fiqh with our previous seasons where people, perhaps spouses are concerned that the husband is drinking, and do those actually exist in our community?
Of course they do. They do. Yeah. Just as in any community, we're not immune.
No.
I mean, we have boundaries and rules to help protect us, which is why alcohol is forbidden for us, right? So people still engage in that behavior, but secretly. Some who are far away from the religious community will publicly do it, but that's their choice and their lifestyle. But people who are with the people who are living in an addictive situation will keep it hidden, right? And even like I said, in the non-Muslim communities, alcoholism is very prevalent, and people try to pretend that they're functioning well while under the influence, while they're driving, while they're working. We know what can happen with the driving, because they show they've become so accustomed to the alcohol in their system, they can, in their mind, they feel that they can function normally with it, because for them it's just like taking a painkiller to reduce the effects of that. So people get addicted to it, starting off just as a social thing, and then it becomes a habit for them, and it becomes a dependency, and they feel they cannot live without it. I've got lots of young people that come to me of Muslim background as well, who come seeking support and say, I don't want this to be part of my life. I know, we've got the layer of the Islamic issues here, that I know what I'm doing is haram. I don't feel that I'm worthy to pray or wear the hijab or go to a mosque because I'm doing these things. And so it's an added layer, an interesting discussion to have, with the student.
The guilt as well.
The guilt and the shame, right? Because now it's become an illness, it's an addiction. It also impacts their life, academic life, their social life, the family life, especially if the family finds out. It's a big deal.
It's a downward spiral, isn't it?
Exactly.
And it's a shame because I obviously when you speak to young people and they talk about perhaps I can't wear hijab, I can't go to the centre, I won't be welcomed, I have this. But actually Allah is so merciful that He covers
Alhamdulillah.
our sins. And even if we get to that point that we are doing things that we can't control, we perhaps need the help of experts like yourself to be able to learn how to control our mind, our willpower, and not succumb to haram. But that we shouldn't alienate ourselves from a centre, because it could be that light enters us and shaitan plays with our mind, doesn't he? That no, don't go, because. But yeah, we should never lose hope in God. I think is one of the key
Absolutely.
elements.
And He tells us He's the all forgiving, and I use these concepts in our therapy depending on the client and depending if they are wanting this type of therapy. So it's very soothing and comforting when they hear that. You know, you repent, you do not repeat, you are forgiven. This again, I do have connections in my community where I would refer students because it's a specialized area. And even here in London, again, I would recommend that people who are struggling with this to call the Muslim Youth Helpline, and they will direct them to the appropriate referrals here as well.
Definitely, if I feel that, if people feel that they need the help. Often, in what's interesting in considering what our previous mornings have been discussing different topics and the dependency that people, it's almost like the trigger. Is it stress? Is it something that we're not managing, and then something gives us that temporary relief, and that we're relying on that substance? And in this case, we're talking about addictions. But is that what's taking people away from normality and the stressful normality they have?
Well, stress is it can kill you, as they say, if you don't take care of yourself in so many different ways, right? And just to backtrack a little bit when it comes to mental health and awareness and education, some people are predisposed, meaning they have genetic hereditary factors in their family where they could be predisposed to certain illnesses, mental illnesses, just like physical illnesses, right? Like diabetes, cardiovascular, high blood pressure, low blood pressure, things like that, anemia. So some people could be predisposed to depression, anxiety, schizophrenia, bipolar disorders. So it's there. However, they could be living their lives normally, and nothing in particular is happening to elicit or trigger their illnesses. So they could be living for a long time, nothing happening to them, everything's great in their lives. And then subhanAllah, suddenly like this, a certain stressor could come and trigger that, right? And so this is also related to substances as well, or rather addictions, where let's say they are triggered by a certain stressor, and the comfort that they found. We talked about different ways. We talked about eating disorders. We talked about how people become socially isolated to deal and cope with these illnesses. Another direction people could take is through addictions, that a stressor could be triggered where they find that the best healing or coping is using substances or gambling or pornography to give them that relief.
In terms of the environment people are raised in, so say if you had a parent that was an alcoholic or was somebody that had depression, you saw how they dealt with their stress levels, and perhaps, now we're talking about mental health has such an emphasis in society. It still needs a lot of work, but it's a lot better than it was, say, 30 years ago, that somebody's being raised in an environment that was very negative and very emotional driven. Would they pick up those sort of habits, or is it something that we're capable of saying, no, that's not how I want to behave or should behave? Or can you actually develop those by looking at behaviors that you're going to be copying as a...
You mean like taking on addictive behaviors? The problem here is how accessible drugs are, for example, or how accessible gambling or access to pornography is. That's the issue these days. It's not so much, I'm not going to be doing this. It's so easily accessible. It becomes you and your willpower and your choice to do it. I'll give you an example. A few years ago in Ottawa, we had a big conference, Montreal. Sister Fatima Ali organized a conference on drugs in the community. And we had big speakers like Hassan Rajab Ali, Dr. Tim Sharp, and Alvin Palvin, if I remember the name correctly, who was an ex-football player. Football is an American football, not British. And he became highly successful in his sport, but became highly addictive with his success to drugs. And he crashed and failed and just lost everything. And he came to share his story with us. And he was an inspiring speaker. And because he now is a reformed addict, so to speak, a recovered rather addict, And he gives talks and helps young people and families. And one of the statistics that he gave us, which was very shuddering to think about, and to parents who was, and I remember the parents in the room, they could not believe it.
Wow.
He said, children as young as 8, 9 years old have access to drugs.
Gosh.
And when you think about it, how is that possible?
Yeah.
Well, let me tell you how, and he described it, and it's very frightening. He goes, when you leave them or they go to the bus stop, there could be some people around there of influence. When they're dropped off at the school, before they get into the school, that area, they could be, you know, the influences could be there.
Yeah.
During the breaks, they could walk off school property. There's some time there where they could do that. Lunch as well. After school, when you're not home on their walk back or drive back home or from you know, the school bus, there's that time frame where they, and you think about it, you're like, wow, that's actually true.
Yeah.
So it's so important as families to have that discussion. You know, there's been huge campaigns over the years. I remember growing up in Canada, just say no.
Yeah.
No to drugs.
Yeah.
There's huge campaigns, and you hear little lingo songs that play in your head. But there's so much to that, because saying yes to it the first time could potentially, that's all you need to get hooked, especially if you have an addictive nature where when you like something too much, like we've got these fruits here, you could be of an addictive nature where you love these clementines. One is not enough. I'm saying for an example, right?
Absolutely.
You could sit and polish off 8
Yeah.
because you've got that addictive nature. You enjoy, you like, you don't stop. So you could be of that nature, and then you're exposed to this. And then you just start, and then the description that we did earlier about, you know, the hit is not enough. That's how it can develop.
Just quickly, we have run out of time, but I do want to touch on, so you talked about alcohol and drugs. I understand that, but how does pornography come into that? That there's just that, how does a hit get higher and higher in something like that?
And it is happening. It's prevalent within our communities, in both men and women. These statistics come from the Muslim Youth Healthline. We were discussing that the other day, and they've had more calls from young women as well.
Right.
And so there's a variety of causes. First and foremost, the lack of proper sexual education in our community. People pulling kids out of programs that are already in schools, for example, but they're not providing them with the proper alternative.
Yeah.
That's huge. I know in our community it's shameful, it's taboo. The reality is that's culture.
What is happening?
Religion talks about this. There are books, there are scholars, our imams, the Prophet, all talk about sexual relations within a marriage in a healthy manner. But we don't talk about this openly with our kids. So what happens to the young boy or girl who become aware of their sexual desires? They're growing older, which is normal and natural. And we need to be aware of how to teach our kids about these things in a way where they don't deviate when they are feeling this and want to find release and relief.
Yeah.
Because it's a natural human instinct, subhanAllah.
Yes.
So, and we are taught how to manage it in a healthy way. So they resort girl who become aware of their sexual desires. They're growing older, which is normal and natural. And we need to be aware of how to teach our kids about these things in a way where they don't deviate when they are feeling this and want to find release and relief.
Yeah.
Because it's a natural human instinct, subhanAllah.
Yes.
So, and we are taught how to manage it in a healthy way. So they resort, thank you for coming, bless you for coming, especially Muslim students, where they come and say, I know this is haram, I'm ashamed of this. And they're practicing Muslims in the sense that they're doing everything else, but they're struggling with this and they don't want to do it.
No.
So we're very blessed in our community that we have some young sheikhs who are very supportive. And so I would connect with the sheikhs and say, would you be open to talking to this? They want to work on it from a spiritual angle while I connect them with the appropriate, sexual addiction counselors that we have in our community.
Fortunately, it's all we've got time for. I keep getting notified time's up. Thank you so much. It's a topic in itself, isn't it? That
absolutely.
I think something that I've learned really speaking to you is that we can't really be in denial that these things, if they're happening in society, probably they're happening in our communities, and not to think that
we're immune. We are not.
We're not.
We are human.
Yeah.
And we can be easily susceptible to temptations. It's how we learn to manage them. The key thing here, sister, is to understand we have resources, and it takes great courage. It's not shameful. It takes great courage to come and seek the support and help. and it's in a non-judgmental environment as well.
Definitely.
We have the resources, please access them.
Definitely, in the wise words from Sister Barak. Thank you so much again, and I pray that if anyone is struggling, again, I gave some indication at the beginning of the show. There's the Muslim
Youth Helpline.
Please do approach the resources that are available and don't suffer alone. Again, inshallah, another morning, another chat. And next up, we have Dr. Yasir Madani and another lung topic.
Imam Hussein Media Group is a virtual university that works on a global scale to spread the true message of the Prophet and the Ahlul Bayt, peace and blessings be upon them. Imam Hussein TV was established 10 years ago in the city of Isfahan, Iran. We work to cover all aspects of religion, Islamic jurisprudence, politics, philosophy and many more, and aim to bring the public's attention to the righteous Islamic sect, Shia Islam. Our ultimate goal as a media group is to convey the interpretations of the Holy Quran as well as the traditions and knowledge of the Holy Prophet and his progeny, may Allah's peace and blessings be upon them. Our objectives are to protect and safeguard the Shia youth from the destructive impact of immoral ideologies, standing up against injustice by documenting the oppression of Shia across the globe, as well as encouraging peace and unity amongst the Muslims. To reach our aims and serve the Muslim Ummah, we require a budget that would cover all the expenses for our productions, allowing us to work on different projects. Imam Hussein Media Group is a crowd-funded project. We have no sales nor do we charge for our services. We solely rely on monthly payments, financial contributions, donations, religious alms and generous gifts. The expenses of each production varies depending on the type of project and the style of filming. There are many elements to a production that requires time and capital. The producer must analyze the costs of the venue hire, equipment, transport, feature fees, set design, staff support and further additional costs. The Holy Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him and his family, narrated, "The best of people is he from whom people benefit." It is up to you to help the Muslim Ummah come together and help guide the youth in remaining on the correct path of Islam. To take part in this global conquest and to spread the message of Imam Hussein, peace and blessings be upon him, please visit www.imamhussein3.tv or give us a call on +44 0203 515 0199. You can also contact us via WhatsApp, Telegram, SMS, or even email us on donate@imamhussein.tv. Let's work together hand in hand to elevate the faith of our Shia youth today.
Yes, welcome back, dear viewers of Imam Hussein TV, to this particular show, Morning Baraka, where in this particular segment we're actually focusing on the lungs, in particular the diseases affected with the lungs, and in previous conversations we've focused on smoking, be it the cigarettes or the shisha or the e-cigarettes. Today we're going to be focusing more along the direct diseases associated with smoking, and of course to discuss this, as always, for this particular aspect, our resident expert within this field, Dr. Sayyid Yasir Madani. Thank you so much for your time once again. So yeah, Zahra, we were talking about actually before we went on air in terms of the most common kind of disease people associate cigarettes or smoking with is lung cancer, yes. But actually there's more to it than that.
Sure. Doctor. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillah rabbil alamin wassalatu wassalamu ala sayyidina Muhammad wa alihi tayyibin at-tahirin. So one of the most common lung conditions, probably after